Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well. Today we are going to be trying out a pattern that has been written by AI. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have seen a few people seem to be getting scammed recently by crochet kits that are actually written by AI. So they will advertise with one image, but the pattern turns out completely different. So I thought we could kind of see what you might end up with if you accidentally purchase an AI generated crochet pattern. So I asked ChatGPT for some ideas on what kind of simple, easy crochet pattern we should try out. I'll flash some images up here, which is why I'm a little bit off center in the frame. And out of this list, the one that caught my eye was a crochet bee, and that is because I do actually have a crochet bee pattern on this channel. If you want to check it out. So I asked it to design the pattern for the bee, which I have printed out here so that I can refer to it, and it gave me that. And then I also asked it to generate an image of what it thinks this bee should look like, and just from a quick glance at the pattern and looking at this, I do not think that they are going to match up at all, but we shall see. That's what this experiment is about, I guess. And I thought I can use this to kind of teach you things to look out for when people are advertising crochet kits that might seem a little bit off. So you can see why somebody would be drawn in by this. It's very appealing, very cute, and from a distance they do look like real crochet stitches, but I'm just going to zoom it in to show you. This one particularly caught my eye, and this does look like a real increase, the one I've highlighted here, but because I know amigurumi, it should be like 90 degrees the other way, so it's like a real increase, but it's the wrong way up, if that makes sense. Just as an example there. And also if you look at the rest of the stitches, they do look like real crochet stitches from afar, but when you zoom in, they don't look like any specific crochet stitch, if that makes sense. Now, these might be easy to spot if you are familiar with crochet and amigurumi, but if you are a brand new beginner, you probably wouldn't know what to look for with these stitches. But a good way to spot if an image might be AI generated is if it just looks a little bit too perfect. So the edges are too smooth, all of the stitches just look perfect, the background is really nice, it looks really nicely edited. And if you are a little bit unsure, you can find AI detectors with just a simple Google search. So you'd input that image and it would tell you how likely it is that that image is AI generated. I also found a guide on how to spot if crochet images are AI on Instagram, so I will link that creator's post below in case it's helpful to anybody. But without further ado, let's start diving into the pattern. So the first thing it gave me was a list of materials. So it suggests worsted weight yarn in yellow, black and white, which is also known as Aran yarn depending on which country you're from. So here is my black and white Aran yarn, and then this is the only yellow shade that I have in an Aran weight. It's a bit more of a mustard shade, but we're just going to go with it today because I didn't really want to go out and buy a new yellow yarn just for this AI pattern. But the first thing that flagged to me as a little bit strange, if this seems normal to you, you can drop that in the comments, but it suggested a 3.5mm crochet hook, which I think is too small for this yarn weight. I would usually use a 5mm with this. I know with amigurumi a lot of people do like to size down their hooks to make their stitches a bit more uniform, but I wouldn't expect it to drop all the way down to a 3.5mm, but that's what the pattern says, so we're going to go with that. We're going to try and stick as closely, like where possible, to the pattern. One of the things I am going to ignore is it suggests safety eyes, but I never use safety eyes, so I'm just going to embroider on as usual, but I will follow where it's telling me to put the eyes. And then all it says is polyfill, a yarn needle and a stitch marker. It doesn't suggest scissors, but you need scissors for amigurumi, so I am going to use scissors. But yes, let's get started on making this bee. I'm not really going to run through the actual pattern itself while I'm making it because it's not really a tutorial. This is more of an experiment just to see how it turns out. And I don't think this is something that you should really be wanting to follow. If you do want a bee pattern, like I said, I do have my own if you wanted to check that out. But yes, I am gonna cast on with my yellow yarn as it states and start making some increases, and I'll check back in and we'll see how it's looking. So here is what we have so far. Everything seems pretty normal and how you would expect to start an amigurumi. All the stitch counts and rows are correct, which you would expect from a computer program. It's a lot smaller than I would expect for this type of yarn, but that's because of the hook, of course. Yeah, we're going to carry on and I'll check back in once we have moved on to the black colour. So we are 11 rounds in here and it does look pretty good so far, surprisingly. It looks reasonably close to the picture as well. I think this black stripe is thicker, but I think there is trouble on the horizon, so I'll come back to you when we've done our next couple of stripes. So I've got my next 2 stripes done and I'm ready to start decreasing and stuffing, but before I do that, it has instructed me to add my eyes, and it says to put these between rows 10 and 11, which is here. So very strange placement, and because it was on the black rows, I've done it in blue and I've added my white highlights just so that you can see them. And it says to put them 6 stitches apart, so that makes them like this. It looks very odd, a little bit creepy, but that's what the pattern says. It's definitely not like the picture. So now it says to start stuffing, which I'm going to do. And then we're moving on to the decreases, and there is a problem with these. The row counts are incorrect. So it went from 15 to 17 for the last stripe, and then for the decrease rounds it starts back at 6. So I guess I spoke too soon about the row counts and numbers, but let's go ahead and finish this, get it all stuffed and fastened off, and then we will move on to the wings. So here is the finished body. Now, aside from the eyes, obviously, it does look like a decent shape and pattern for a bee, but if we compare it to the picture that would hypothetically be used to advertise this kit, the stripes are very different. There is no like stinger on the end. Obviously the eyes are in a really odd place. It only mentioned to start stuffing before our decreases and it didn't mention it again, but I gave it the benefit of the doubt and just stuffed it fully. Another thing I did notice, when it says fasten off, it just said to weave in the ends. It didn't say to sew it closed. And I might sound like I'm nitpicking a bit, but the less detailed, the less beginner friendly it would be. And I would say I don't think the quality of the pattern writing is very good. So we're going to move on to the white and make some wings off camera. Looking at the pattern, I don't think these are going to be very accurate either, but let's see how they turn out. So here are my tiny little wings. They're not the most proportional, but who knows, maybe that's like a stylistic thing. It's definitely not the same as the picture, but anyway. So let's move on to the assembly instructions. All it really says is sew the wings to the top of the bee's body evenly spaced, and then optionally you can embroider a little smile, which I'll add. Yeah, so let's get these wings attached. Here's the finished bee. It was a little bit awkward placing the wings because of where the eyes are, but hey ho. It did say optional, add a small loop to the top to turn it into a keychain. Doesn't tell you how to do that. The assembly instructions weren't great, especially if you're a beginner. I think it would be helpful to have more details in a pattern. And then it asked if I would like an accessory for the bee, so I said yes. And it gave me the pattern for a flower. So here's how it turned out. And it is quite cute. The petals are like a pretty standard, but if you can see, it doesn't tell you how to move on from one petal to the next. It just says the first petal ends with slip stitch in the same stitch, and then it says repeat above for all 5 stitches around the center, but it doesn't tell you how to move on. I don't know if that's nitpicky. I think that's just not really written in a very helpful way. And it says assembly ideas. It says on the bee's head, slightly off center like a crown or a headband. In its arms, there are no arms in the pattern, so I'm not gonna go for that. Or on the wing or the side like a decorative pin. And since our eyes are on the top, I'm not gonna put it on the top, I'm gonna go for that last option. So here's how the finished bee looks all put together. Overall, I suppose the body shape isn't bad for what you'd expect from a bee, but the instructions weren't great, especially the assembly instructions. The wings and the instructions for the eyes kind of don't fit in with the design. It definitely does not match the reference photo. And overall, I would suggest that you don't purchase any AI patterns or try and generate them for yourself, because the way that the AI learns how to design these crochet patterns is by taking work from other designers and basically plagiarizing it. So I would definitely suggest going to independent designers. There's plenty of free patterns out there from them, or purchasing from them if you have the means to support them. Yeah, so I would just be careful if you do see any advertisements for crochet kits out there and the image looks a bit questionable, shall we say, then I would always say it's worth giving it a second thought. But yeah, so I think the lesson from this is to support independent makers and designers and stay away from AI for crochet because it doesn't really know best. But yeah, if you have enjoyed today's video, let me know by dropping a like down below. If you're new, maybe consider subscribing, it really helps me out. And let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm always happy to hear your opinions. And apart from that, I'll see you next time.